I feel like the noise is coming from your side. Yeah, it's better now. So I believe we should. I think we should wait a couple of minutes more for some more people to join, and then we start the stuff. So we don't want to take so much time doing all this because we know this is a Tuesday, and people will be kind of busy. So we are going to make sure that the session is as concise as possible, and also make sure that people like get a lot from the session. So if you're willing to get started in tech, today is for web development, and we have a speaker that is available already. That's on the call. That's going to take everyone through what it takes to be a web developer, and how you can basically get started with web development. So, like I said, we just have to wait a couple of minutes more, and we just get started with the session. So, by 12:03, so we're going to bring someone that is going to just give a brief introduction about our speaker for today. So, you're able to get more insight as to who the speaker is, where he's coming from, and what it does, and the impact is trying to make on this session. So I think by 12:04 we should kickstart officially. Okay, so it's 12:04 already. So I think Aminat, think you have the floor.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hello, please, am I audible enough?
Yes, good afternoon, Aminat.
Good afternoon. My name is Aminat. I welcome you all to the day one of the 5 Tech Days onboarding session hosted by the DSC University of Unilorin chapter to discuss about getting into, or rather transitioning into, a certain tech field, maybe UI UX, machine learning, app development, web development, and others. But for today's session, it focuses on web development, and we have our speaker, Mr. Mfondo Mark, who will be putting us through the web development journey, what it takes, what is expected, how to go about it, and what decisions to make. Please welcome our speaker, Mr. Mark, an engineer at Oriana, who is also a student of Auburn University, the DSC lead of his school, founder and CEO of Rafia City Hub. Last but not least, he is also the lead ambassador for Ingressive for Good, an EduTech fellow on robotics and AI. And lastly, he has a strong desire for building and leading tech communities. With this, I say welcome, Mr. Mark. Thank you for wanting to be with us for this session. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Aminat.
You're
Hello,
welcome.
good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon.
Hello, if you can hear me, please just make a gesture, drop a message on the chat. Okay, my name is Mfondo Mark, and I'll be sharing my screen very soon. We'll be discussing getting started with web development. Okay, let me share my screen, please. If you're seeing my screen, please indicate. Are you seeing my screen?
Not yet.
Okay, 1 minute, please. Okay, okay. 1 minute. 3, 2, 1. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Mfondo Mark. I'm a front-end engineer at Oriona, and I'll be talking to you guys today on getting started with web development. You can actually connect with me on Twitter at Mark, LinkedIn at Mfondo Mark. Across all social media platforms, still the same. Okay, by the end of this guide, we shall all have an understanding of the basic of web development, what skills you need to know, and where to find them. So this particular session is going to be a guide on web development throughout. Now, for the outline of this course, we're going to check what is web development, how website works, front end versus back end, and our code editors. 2 is basic front end, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Tools we need, web development, package managers, build tools, version controls. Additional front end, SaaS, responsive design, JavaScript frameworks. Then the 4B is going to be basic back end, server, database management, and their programming languages. I believe we can all hear me right.
Yes, we can.
Please, if I'm too fast, please call me back. So in this roadmap, I recommend doing step 1, 2, and 3 in order. Then depending on whether you want to focus on more front end or back end, you can do step 4A or 4B in any order. I personally think it is a good idea for front end web developers to know at least a bit of back end, and vice versa. Back end to show also a bit of front end. At the very least, knowing the basics of both will help you figure out if you like front end or you like back end better. So now, what is web development? Before we get into actual coding, let's first take a look at some general information on what web development is, how website works, the difference between front end and back end, and also using the code editor. Now, all websites at their most basics are just a bunch of files that are stored on a computer called a server. And this server is connected to the internet. You can then load that website through a browser like Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Brave, very kind of listen browser on your computer or your phone. Your browser is called the client in this situation. So every time that you're on the internet, you the clients are getting and loading data like a car pics, a laptop pictures, an image of yourself, anything from the server, as well as submitting data back to the server. That if you want to load more picture, you click on it, it tells the server, okay, fine, I want to see more pictures of this, and the server returns it back to you. This back and forth between the client and the server is the basics of what the internet, basics of how the internet works. So what's the difference between front end and back end? Now, the term front end, back end, and full stack developer describes what part of the client server relationship you're working with. Now, front end means that you are dealing mainly with the client side. It is called front end because it is what you can see in the browser. Conversely, the back end is the part of the website that you can't really see, but it handles a lot of the logic and functionality that is necessary for everything you're working with. Now, let's say, for example, you go to Facebook now. The moment you go to Facebook, you load facebook.com. What you see there is the front end developer is responsible for it. The image, the buttons, the text, the colors, everything there is the job of the front end developer. Now, the moment you try to click and upload a picture, upload an image, now the process of you uploading that image, the functionality behind uploading an image, it is the job of the backend developer. The backend developer is responsible for functionalities of a website. So majorly the difference between the front end and the back end is this. Front end, aesthetics, beauty, design of the website. Back end, the functionality behind the website. So one way you can think about this is that front end web developers is like the front of the house, part of the restaurant. It's the section where customers come to see and experience the restaurant, the interior decor, sittings, and of course, eating the food. On the other hand, back-end web development is like the back of the house, part of the restaurant. It's where deliveries and inventory are managed, and the process to create the food all happens there. So there's a lot behind things behind the scene that the customer won't see, but they will experience and hopefully enjoy the end product, the delicious meal. So definitely we'll go to eateries, and all we'll see at the showcase is nice food, isn't it? But we're not seeing how the food are being made. So what you see being displayed in at the eatery is exactly what a front-end developer does. Now at the back, the chef responsible for cooking the meal, those are people who call the back-end developers. Now using the code editor. Now code editor are applications where we use in writing our code for any programming languages. Now, when you build a website, the most essential tool that you use is your code editor or the integrated development environment. These tools allows you to write the markup and code that will make up the website. There are quite a few good options out there, but currently the most popular code editor is VS Code. Now, Visual Studio Code is more lightweight version of Visual Studio Microsoft main IDE. It is fast, free, easy to use, and you can customize it with themes and extensions. Other code editors are Sublime Text, Atoms, and Vim. But for me, I choose VS Code because VS Code is actually one of the best and easy code editor to use for developers. Like 90% of developers use VS Code because you can add a lot of plugins to it and makes your work easier. Now, the basic front end. Please, I believe everybody are following me, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the basic front end. Now, the front end of the website is made up of three types of files: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These files are what is loaded in the browser on the client side. Now we're going to take a little bit closer look at each and every one of them. What is HTML? What is CSS? And what is JavaScript? Why do we need HTML? Why do we need CSS? And why do we need JavaScript? So we're going to look at each and every one of them one after the other. Now HTML. Currently, current version of HTML is HTML5. HTML or hypertext markup language is the foundation of our website. It is the main file type that is loaded in your browser when you look at the website. The HTML file contains all the contents on the web page, and it uses tags to denote different types of content. For example, you can use tags to create headline, titles, paragraph, bulleted lists, images, and so on. HTML tags by themselves do have some styles attached, but they are pretty basics, like what you use to see in Word documents. Now, HTML is just a markup, a structure. Let's use the human anatomy for example. HTML is just like the skeleton of the body. The moment you bring up a skeleton, you know this is just a skeleton. There's no beauty attached to it. That is what HTML does. There is no website on planet Earth that is being built without the use of HTML. So HTML is just like the backbone of every website. Now, CSS. We should all remember that we're just having an intro into web development. In the next series, we're going to look into it deeper. So this is an intro about it. Now, CSS or cascading style sheet lets you style that HTML content so it looks nice and fancy. You can add colors, custom fonts, lay out the elements of your website however you want them to look. You can even create animations and shapes with CSS. There is a lot of depth of CS to CSS, and sometimes people tend to gloss over it so they can move on to things like JavaScript. However, I can't overestimate the importance of understanding how to convert a design into a website layout using CSS. If you want to specialize in front end, it's essential you have really solid CSS skills. Now, every website has HTML attached to it. Now, what differentiates one website from another when it comes to aesthetics is the ability to utilize CSS to it. If you open facebook.com, the way it is being built is not the same way google.com is being built. It's not the same way andela.com is being built. It's not the same way yahoo.com is being built. Now, the ability for them to utilize CSS as one of the good skills beautifies it. Now, the ability to shift a particular tag to the left, to the right, add colors to its designs, float in animations, this is being done by CSS. CSS is a very powerful file and a very good skill you need to know. If you really want to be a front-end developer, then you need CSS. CSS also takes the responsibility of responsiveness, so that if you open a website on the phone, it gives you a mobile view. For responsiveness, you need CSS for it. So CSS is one of the very good skills you need to learn. You open a site right now and the site is very beautiful. The person that built it knows how to use CSS very well. Now, JavaScript. Now, HTML and CSS are not the programming languages. HTML is the markup language. Now, the first programming languages we are going to look into when it comes to front end is JavaScript. Now, JavaScript is a programming language that uses designs to run in the browser. Now, you can also call it ECMAScript. Yes, you can call it ECMAScript or JavaScript. Any of them is acceptable. Now, using JavaScript, you can make your browser dynamic, meaning it will respond to different inputs from the user or other resources. For example, you can build a back to top button that when the user clicks it, they will scroll back to the top of the page. Or you can build a weather widget that that will display today's weather based on the user's location in the world, especially if you want to develop your skills later on with JavaScript frameworks like React. You understand more if you take the time to learn regular vanilla JavaScript first. It's a really fun language to learn, and there's so much you can do with it. Now, there are some jokes they put on the internet about JavaScript that one of the richest set of developers in the world are JavaScript developers, because till tomorrow, JavaScript can never go extinct. It's useful. This is one programming language that has been beating other languages. Now, you can also call JavaScript as a language for the web. Your web browser is built with JavaScript. So you can't do without JavaScript. As long as you want to become a web developer, you can't do without JavaScript. Now, where to learn HTML and JavaScript? Most of the time, people don't ask me, where can I learn them? There are a lot of free resources online, even paid courses you can check on it for you to learn HTML, CS, and JavaScript. Free Code Camp. Actually, one of my favorite places to recommend is Free Code Camp. It is an online boot camp that is non-profit and completely free. I love this option because if you're a beginner and not completely sure if coding is for you, it's a low pressure, risk-free way to see if you like it. But one of the downside of FreeCodeCamp is that while they do have an incredible curriculum with a built-in coding environment, they don't have structured videos as part of it. So if you're the kind of person that learns through video, FreeCodeCamp is not for you. But if you learn through text and everything, then you can actually use FreeCodeCamp. Now, another place you can actually learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is Treehouse. This one is a premium online learning platform that is video based. There are prices attached to it. It is not free though, but I think they have some free trial, 7-day trial for it. So you can come to Team Treehouse and you also learn. Even these two, Webboss has free courses on learning Flexbox, CSS Grid, and JavaScript that are excellent. I actually went through his CSS Grid course and it was really thorough and also fun. Wes is actually a good teacher. You can go to Udemy and actually see most of his courses there. Now, Udemy, talking about Udemy is one of the leading online platform with a lot of great courses attached to it. You can learn almost everything on Udemy, be it web development, be it personal growth, be it UI UX, anything. Udemy has it. Although Udemy is paid though, it's a paid course, but we have courses for $100, $199. So by the end of this session, I'll actually do a giveaway. If anybody wants to learn web development, I'll pay 50% of the fee on Udemy. I think there's a cost for $199, so I'll pay 50% for it for the person. Anybody. I don't have 3 slots. I'll pay the money 50%, then the person will pay the money 50%. Once you're in for it, you let me know. I'll communicate with your DSC lead, and he will give the 3 people the courses. Okay, YouTube. YouTube is one particular platform most people underestimate a lot. Hello, please. Can you hear me, please?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Now, YouTube is one of the platform I enjoy a lot. A lot of people are actually giving testimonies of YouTube. If you don't know how to cook, you can actually go to YouTube and just type how to prepare amala. And funny enough, you see over 400, 300 videos on how to prepare amala, and they'll tell you step by step. So YouTube is actually a nice place. We have a lot of crash courses on YouTube. Travis Media is one guy that is actually making the YouTube fun for people, for developers. He gives a lot of free crash courses on YouTube. You can learn practicals on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, a lot. You just have to go in, search it, and you see it. So if you're the kind of person that you don't like video, you don't like online, but you prefer books, yeah, there are some great authors. Actually, I will recommend to you guys for you to use because everybody learns in a different way. But me, I think the way I learn is through video because I feel I'll enjoy it when I see what you're doing on the go. So I like using video. But there are people that actually like using books. So we have a lot of good authors. Electro JavaScript. I've I've used it before. Most people really recommend it. It's good for JavaScript. Check it. The prices are not much. Maybe $40, $100. That's okay. But you can check there on HTML, CSS. This John Dockett, his books are on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and jQuery. They are beautifully designed, really well written, and have a lot of photos and images to help teach the material a lot. There are also some websites where you can also check on it. Mozilla Developer Network, CSS Tricks, and Smashing Magazines. So now, tools. Let's get into some other front-end technologies now. As we mentioned, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are the basics building blocks of front-end web development. In addition to them, there are a few other tools that you want to learn. It's necessary you learn them. It's needful you learn them if you want to boost your CSS, your front-end development skills. Now, package managers. We've heard of npm, yarn, yum, nvm. Now, package managers are online collections of softwares. Much of it is open source. Each piece of software called a package is available for you to install and use in your own project. You can think about them like plugins. Instead of writing everything from scratch, you can use helpful utilities that other people have written already. There's a lot of plugins for you to use. Now, the most popular package manager is called npm or Node Package Manager, but you can also use another package manager called Yarn. Both are good options to use, to know and use, although it is probably best to start with npm. So if you really want to know about more, you just go to npm.org and you read more about it. So for now, we're just giving you an intro about it. Build tools, Moly bundlers and build tools like Webpack, Bob, Parcel are another essential part of front-end workflow. On a basic level, these tools run packs and processes files. You can use them to compile your SAS files to CSS, transfer your ES6. Now, this ES6 here is stages of JavaScript. We have ES5, ES6. Now, ES6 mostly do with ternary operations. When we get into JavaScript better, you understand why it is called ES6, ES5, and the progression of it so far. No, so transfer your ES6 JavaScript files down to ES5 for better browser support. The reason it does that is because most browsers now don't support ES6, so it helps you transpile it, run a local web server, and many other useful tasks that you need good tools for. Gob, technically a task runner, has a suite of npm package that you can use to compile and process your files. So we can actually go over and check this more and understand why we need them. It's necessary you know how to use them though. Webpacks and webpacks. Now there are some frameworks you want to use your CLI to build it from scratch, like to install it directly from scratch. But if you're using a webpack that's already been compiled already, all you need to do is just run the webpack and just install it. It's like a shortcut to a lot of things. Webpack is actually super strong. But for now, I'll advise you know the basics of everything before you start going to build tools and so on. All these are parcel are built to. It's actually a newer bundle like Webpack, but it comes pre-configured out of the box, so you can literally get it going in just a few minutes, and you won't have to worry as much as about configuring anything. If you're using CLIs, you have to configure it yourself. But Webpack does not allow you to configure anything. You just on the go and you just do it. So, as a web developer, it is necessary, it is mandatory that you understand version control systems. Gone are the days where you want to work with a fellow developer and you'll be copying files from flash drive to flash drive. Nowadays, you don't copy flash anymore. You use a version control system. Now, version control, also called source control, is a system that keeps track of every code change that you make in your project file. You can even revert to a previous change if you make a mistake. It's also like having infinite save points for your project. And let me tell you, it can be a huge lifesaver. The most popular version control system is an open source called Git. Using Git, you can store all your files and their change history in collections called repositories. Now, Git has actually helped developers work. Like some couple of weeks ago, I was actually working with some developers outside the country, and version control systems have actually made it possible for 10, 20 developers to be able to collaborate on a particular project without being in the same location. So let's say, for example, now I'm working on my particular on this project on my system, and my system crashed. Assuming there was no version control systems, the entire project would have been gone. But version control system allows you to have duplicate version of the project on the server and on every local server that is available. If we have 5 developers, which means we have 5 local server and the main server, which is the one on the cloud. So Git is one of the version control system I think every developer should know. It is mandatory, very important thing you learn Git. You can go to YouTube and have a crash course on Git and you enjoy. So additional front end down, there are some more intermediate skills that you want to learn. I recommend that you look at the following: SAS, responsive design, and JavaScript framework. Now, responsive design, like we said the other time, is for you the ability for you to build a website so that anybody using any device can access the website and it still looks what decent. If I'm building for a mobile view, I should be able to build for a desktop view. We all know that laptops are not the same size. They are 13 inches, 16 inches, 14 inches, 13.5. We won't have big screens, projectors too. So as a developer, you should be able to know how to design a website so that it should be responsive. Now, JavaScript frameworks. There are different type of JavaScript framework that we have. We'll get into that very soon. Most people are always asking me when it comes to frameworks like Mac, which is the best framework to use. To me, I will not recommend you using any framework. I feel have a test of every framework. Then settle for yourself which framework is actually good for a particular project. Now, SAS. SAS is an extension of CSS that makes writing styles more intuitive and modular. It's a really powerful tool. With SAS, you can split up your styles into multiple files for better organizations, create variables to store colors and fonts, and use mixins and placeholder to easily reuse styles. Even if you just utilize some of the basic features like nesting, you will be able to write your style more quickly with less headaches. So SAS is just a way of helping you write your CSS easier. We have other frameworks for CSS. We have Bootstrap, we have Tailwind CSS, we have Wing CSS, we have a lot of other CSS frameworks. But to me, I feel it is necessary to understand the basics of CSS first before we start using frameworks. Now we talk about responsive designs, so that we build a particular site where every user is accommodated, irrespective of the device you are using. You can also access it. Now, JavaScript frameworks. I believe once you have the basic of vanilla JavaScript down, you may want to learn one of the JavaScript frameworks, especially if you want to be a full stack JavaScript developer. Now, these frameworks come with pre-built structure and components that allows you to build apps more quickly than you started from scratch. Currently, we have three main frameworks: React, Angular, and Vue. To me, I am actually a Vue developer. I like using Vue. I will not tell you it is the best, but I will tell you for all the projects I've been doing that actually serve me a lot of use using Vue. Vue is lightweight. Every framework has its pros and cons, has its own advantages and disadvantages. So it depends on the framework you want to use. Have a look at the three frameworks: React, Angular, and Vue. The one you think you understand better, fine, you can use it. Just like programming languages, the syntax are always the same. The moment you understand one particular programming language, there's every tendency you can understand every other programming languages. Same with frameworks. React and Vue have components, so they're almost the same, almost alike. Yeah, it's React. Technically, it's actually a library. It was created by Facebook, and this is the most popular framework right now. You can get started learning by going to React.js website if you're interested in premium React courses. Both these two guys have good courses on React. Angular. Angular is being owned by Google, was the first big framework, and it was created by Google. It's still very popular, even though it has been surpassed by React recently. You can start learning Angular on their website. Gary from Design Course also has an Angular crash course on YouTube. Now, Vue is my framework. I like using Vue for best known to me. It's easier. It's it saves time, reload time. It's nice. I'm not preaching Vue, but I'm not gonna tell you guys why I like Vue. Now, Vue is a newer framework created by Evan Yu, a former Angular developer. While it is smaller in use than React and Angular, it is growing quickly, and it's also considered easy and fun to use. You can get up and running with Vue on our official website. So you might be wondering now, okay, well, which framework is the best? The truth is, they are all good, though. Yes, in web development, every framework is good. There's almost never a single choice that is 100% the best choice for every person and every situation. Your choice will most likely be determined by your job or simply by which one you enjoy using the most. If your end goal is to land a job, try researching which framework seems to be the most common in potential job listing in your area. Don't worry too much about which framework to choose. Very, very well, don't worry. It's more important that you learn and understand the concept behind them. Also, once you learn one framework, it is easier to learn other ones, similar to programming languages, like I said before. So, basic backend. We've talked about front end, from front end frameworks, and the advantage of front end. Now let us go into basic backend. Now, the backend or the server side of web development is made up of three main components: the server side, programming language, and database. Remember, we made an illustration about a restaurant where the chefs are actually the backend developers. You go to the kitchen, that is where the backend is being done. The functionality behind the restaurant, that is where it's being done. So this is the same thing as the backend. Now let's get into it. Server. As we mentioned at the very beginning, the server is the computer where all the website files, the database, and other components are stored. Traditional server run on operating systems such as Linux or Windows. They are considered centralized because everything, the website files, the backend code, and the data are stored together on the server. Well, I believe you are still following me, right?
Yes.
Yes, we are following.
Okay, thank you. Now, nowadays, there are also serverless architectures, which is a more decentralized type of setup. This type of application splits up those components and leverages third-party vendors to handle each of them. Despite the name, though, we still do you still need some kind of server, at least, to store your website files. Some example of serverless providers are AWS or Netlify. Now, serverless setups are popular because they are fast, cheap, and you don't need to worry about server maintenance. They are great for simple static websites that don't require a traditional server-side language. However, for very complex applications, the traditional server setup might be a better option. So to learn more about serverless setup, Netlify has an informative blog post that takes you through all the setups, steps to set up a static website with development. So the programming languages on the server, you need to use a programming language to write the functions and logic of your application. The server then compiles your code and conveys the results to the client. Popular programming language for the web include PHP, Python, Ruby, C Sharp, Java, C++. There's also a form of server side in JavaScript, which is Node.js, which is a runtime environment that can run JavaScript code on the server. So if you choose to become a full stack JavaScript developer, you'll be using frameworks like Vue, React, Angular for front end, and using Node Express for back end. That makes you a full stack JavaScript developer. Now, let's check out a list of most commonly used programming language for web development. C Sharp. For the backend, C Sharp was developed as Microsoft competitor to Java. It's used to make web apps with the .NET framework, game development, and can even be used to create mobile apps. Yeah, Java too can be used to create Android apps also built on web. Node.js, like we said, is for a JavaScript for backend, and it's JavaScript that runs on the server using the Express.js framework for it. PHP. Now, most of us that actually have heard about WordPress. WordPress is built and powered by PHP. Let us say over 80% of the website running today online is being powered by PHP. Funny enough. Now, PHP is the language that powers WordPress, so this might be a good choice if you think you will be working with small business website. As many of them use WordPress, you can also build web apps with the Laravel framework. Laravel is the framework for PHP. Python is one thing I called all-purpose language. You have Python for data science, you have Python for artificial intelligence, Python for robotics, Python for web. Sure, Python is just like the father of all programming languages. It has a very simpler syntax than other languages. You can use it to build web apps. You can use the Django or Flask frameworks for the backend. So Python is actually a powerful tool. Ruby. Ruby is another language that has a syntax considered to be fun to learn. You can build web apps with the framework Ruby on Rails. Even Go. Go is a programming language. So there are a lot of programming languages you can also look at. So just like the just like with the JavaScript frameworks, there is no one best programming language. Your choice should be based on either your personal interests, your preference, as well as potential jobs. So do a little research on which might be a good choice for you. JavaScript is a choice for me, might not be a choice for you. You might choose to use Python, you might choose to use PHP. So your choice of programming language should be one, job ready. Two, is it needed in your region? Three, what is the availability of learning materials on it? So these are the things you should consider when learning a programming language. Now, databases. Database, as the name implies, are where you store information for your website. Most databases use a language called SQL, pronounced SQL, which stands for Structured Query Language. In the database, data is stored in tables with rows sort of like complex Excel documents. Then you can write queries in SQL in order to create, read, update, and delete Chrome operation. Now, the database is run on the server using servers like Microsoft SQL servers or Windows servers, MySQL for Linux. So, if you're going to be a backend developer, you need to understand the basic intricacy of database. So, there's also NoSQL database that stores data in JSON, yes, files, and those ones are APIs, yeah, and opposed to the traditional tables. One type of NoSQL database is Mongodb, which is often used with React, Angular, and Vue applications. Some examples of how data is utilized on website are: if you have a contact form on your website, you can build the form so that every time someone submits the form, their data is saved onto your database. You can also al- you can also use user logins on the database and write logic in the server-side language to handle checking and authenticating what every user logins. So we understand what front end is, what back end is, the languages involved in front end and back end. Now the question is, what is the next step? After this, what should we do? Now, to me, a few tips that I have if you are going to be a self-taught developer. First, don't try to learn everything at once. It will crash to destroy you. Pick one skill to learn at a time. Don't jump around from tutorial to tutorials. As you are learning, it's okay to check out different resources to see which one you like best. But again, pick one and try to go all the way through it. Know that learning web development is a long-term journey. Yeah, this is one issue I have with people. They believe they start learning web development in January, and in March they will start landing jobs of 1 million naira a month, 700,000 a month. No, it doesn't happen like that. It takes time. So that's why the stories you may have read of people going from zero to landing a web development job in 3 months. I would aim more at 1 to 2 years to become job ready. If you're starting from beginning, there is more to web development than it seems. Anybody that started learning web development from the very first day and 3 months, he or she lands a day job. It might be he or she is actually a web designer, not actually a web developer. To be a web developer, a lot of sacrifices and time and effort you need to put into learning. So just watching a video course or reading a book won't automatically make you an expert. Learning the material is just the first step. Building actual website and projects, even just demo ones for yourself, will help you to really cement your learning. Yes, there's one thing I've actually experienced in my journey as a web developer. If you really want to be good as a web developer, you must build projects. Build projects, no matter how stupid it is. Maybe a calculator, a weather app, a sports app. Don't build things, keep building. The more you build, the more you know. The more you build, the more you become stronger. So in web development, you learn by doing. You don't just sit down and learn, look at tutorial and think you are good. For you to be good, you need to put in the work. So I really thank each and every one of you for this opportunity you've given us to me. And I believe I wasn't too fast and I won't take your time. So please, now it's time for questions. If you have any questions, please do send in your questions. Thank you very much.
Um, Thank you very much, Mark. So we have a couple of questions, and I'll just be reading it out because I know that you are still presenting your screen and you may not be able to see some of them. So while you were presenting, someone asked a question actually. So the question goes this way: which way is best to learn as a developer?
Okay, the best way to learn as a developer is having a mentor and also getting involved in a community. Being a self-taught developer is very difficult. The stress is very, very high. But if you get involved in a community, you will learn faster. If I tell people how old I am in the tech industry, they will think I'm lying. Most people think I am 7 years old in the tech industry. I've been here for 5 years. But funny enough, I'm just 2 years old. 2 years old. Now, the secret behind it is I had good mentors that actually taught me. So if you have somebody with 10 years experience, if he's teaching you, he's not teaching you with 1 year experience, he's teaching you that 10 years experiences he has, impacting them on you. So you understand it, isn't it? So the best way to learn as a developer, get involved in the community and have a mentor that will be guiding you.
Okay, great. So another question, is it possible for a single individual to learn all the frameworks?
Oh, it's very possible to learn all the frameworks. Very, very possible. But it will take time. To take time. To take time. Now the question is, why learn all the frameworks? What do you want to use it for? If you want to use it for a particular thing, fine. It's possible. I know of a friend that understands Vue, React, Angular, still understand Node.js, PHP, MySQL. We call these kind of people full stack developers. It's possible to learn, but it will take time. When I mean to take time, it might take 11 years, 12 years, 13 years before you understand everything very well.
Okay. So I think this is the last question. Anyone that has any question can also drop them in the chat box. So said what's the difference between a web developer and a web designer?
Okay, um, a web designer, the job, the job of a web designer, please, is just building the structure of the web. Your job is just to build HTML, CSS, and that's all. You are not in concern of calling of APIs and functionalities. No. Now, the work of a developer is developing the web. That is when you start using frameworks, start using JavaScript, start using Vue, start using React. A designer just builds and leave it go. A designer job is just for aesthetics, but a developer is responsible for consuming API. From a developer, you get to front end engineer, where you see more about front end. So the basic difference between a front end designer and a front end developer is, to me, a front end developer consumes API and talks about functionality, why a front end designer does not consume any API and does not talk about functionality, just only the aesthetics. That's all.
Okay. So do you recommend that as a developer that you should learn from YouTube or docs? I think this person means documents. Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell every developer, aspiring developer, that you need to use every available resources. To me, I enjoy using videos. I love videos a lot. So maybe to you, documentation is actually what you use. So it's all about self-awareness. Understand yourself. What particular thing is actually good for you? What do you use best? What do you understand best? I have someone that does not understand video. He or she reads books and boom, off he goes. Some of them doesn't even want to read books or see video. All they will do is just go to the documentation and up they go. So what I'm trying to say is this: understand what is good for you, understand what you understand most. Self-awareness is the most important thing. Not because Mr. A understands documentation and you say you must also understand documentation. You don't know if your own is just video. So if you want to force yourself to understand what other somebody is understanding, there is every tendency you will crash. So understand yourself first before you know what is good for you.
Okay. Does that mean that a web designer is also a front end developer?
No, no. A web designer also has like, okay, let me see how I can put it for you to understand. A web designer has a responsibility to do at the front end, but he or she is not a front end developer. Now, before you become a front end developer, definitely you have passed through the stage of being a front end designer. Hope you're getting it. It's just like primary 6, SS3, BSc. Now, before you get to BSc, you must have passed through those primary 6 and SS3, isn't it? So, before you become a developer, you must be a designer first. A designer only use two things: HTML and CSS. He or she is responsible for aesthetics, beauty, and responsiveness. A designer does not really have issues with functionalities. Now, the moment you start dealing with functionalities, calling of APIs, you now become a developer. Hope you understand me.
I think that's good. So another
Okay.
question is what's the difference between web development and UI UX design?
Okay. Now, web development is converting a user interface and a user experience to actual web. Now, UI UX is now you see those picture formats. You go to, you see the picture of the website. Now, the UI UX is responsible for arranging the button, like it is like the name implies, user interface and user experience. So it is the user interface and user experience designer or developer that knows how to place a button, how to place a checkbox, so that the developer can interpret it. Now, UI UX is just like graphic design, but graphic design in a different level. Graphic design for web. We have UI UX for mobile. We have UI UX for web. So UI UX are the ones responsible for the design UI don't write codes. Just like just say a prototypers, they give the developer the prototype to implement. Hope I'm making sense.
Okay, so I think
Sorry, can I
yeah, yeah,
sorry
yeah. Go on.
so are you trying to say like UI UX designers are some are like in some way web designers, but they don't write code. They use other tools without writing code, right?
No, let this way now. UI UX are not web designers. UI UX are like graphic designers. Now, the tools UI UX use are Figma, Photoshop, Illustrator, yes, Adobe AI, and those are the tools they use. Now, for a web designer, they end up using Visual Studio Code, HTML, and CSS. Hope you understand what I'm saying right now. Now,
Yeah, yeah,
the UI
yeah.
UX, yeah, the UI UX just gives, okay, let's say for example now I want to go to, I'm pursuing a contract in one big company, and the company is like, okay, you want to build a website for businesses. Now, give us a model of the website. Hope you understand. Give us a model of the website. So, the job of a UI UX is to give the company how the website will look like. We now take it to the client. This is how it will look like, the landing page will look like. Now, once the
Okay.
client accepts it, we now call the graphic designer and the web designer to now interpret it to code.
Okay. So can I just let me just say to my understanding. So like UI UX are like, let's say, architect. So when you want to build a house, architect has to draw the plan and everything. Then the architect will now give the
Ex-
plan to the
exact,
builders or whatever.
exactly.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I understand.
Okay. Any other questions?
I think that will be all. If there's anyone that has any question, you can unmute yourself easily and ask before we
Yes,
round up.
please. You can unmute yourself and ask your questions, please.
Okay. I think there are no more questions, and yeah. So we are really grateful to everyone that was able to join this session. I really think and I really hope we all have had a great experience so far, and we've learned a couple of things that will get each and everyone started in web development. So
Sorry, excuse
yeah.
me. I'm sorry, I have a question. So is this just like a one time thing, or is there like, you know, a program you guys designed, like let's say like a bootcamp kind of stuff that someone can enroll for? Is there anything like that, or you guys just take this one time program?
Okay, thank you for that question. That's actually very good. So, we are about to start a study group where, like a boot camp basically, where we teach like beginners or intermediates most of this concept. We help them get started with all these things basically. So, before we dive into starting the boot camps and all those things, we felt it would be necessary for us to help beginners with information to get them started with the right information with what they need to know before they can get into a particular field. So we have noticed that most people, when they are diving into technology or when they are diving into tech, they tend to hear some things. And when they hear those things, they make their decisions based on those things. So you may be someone that has heard about UI UX before. You feel UI UX is something that is pleasant to the ear, and you like the sound of UI UX, and you decided to go for it. UI UX might not be your calling, so you tend to maybe not go further learning UI UX, and you may have spent about a couple of months learning UI UX, and you feel it's not your calling, and you decide to switch. So you've waited about I don't know, a couple of months wasting your time on UI UX, where you should have either gone for web development, or maybe you Flutter or machine learning or whatever. So this session is the first session out of a 5-day series. So we'll be doing one today, tomorrow up till Saturday. So on each day we'll be tackling each one skill per day. Like we felt those are the skills that beginners are getting started in and getting confused with the concepts basically. So we will be announcing boot camps, sessions that will be getting us deeper into most of these concepts later on as we move on with DSC. So Kennedy, I hope you are a member of a DSC. I'm not sure.
I'm a member of. Is it Zuri? Is it Zuri? Is it a Zuri training program or?
Okay, that's fine also. So Zuri is a training that just started. So you're a member of Zuri. So Zuri
Yeah.
also can also help you get started with most of these skills. So learning through a particular platform is, you're not limited to learning through a particular platform. So there are so many other platforms that will help you get started with this. So like I said, there's a session tomorrow on from through that session we'll be talking about Flutter. So Flutter is also a framework that people tend to not know how to get started with, or they tend to get confused when they are picking when they are selecting whether to go for Flutter or native development. So most of these things we'll be checking them out tomorrow, and you'll be able to get informed before even um, choosing to go for that particular field. So I hope you are clear with the explanation I've made.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Very clear.
Okay, yeah. So we also make sure that we wait for because this is DSC Unilorin, and we feel most of our sessions right now should be made physical. So we are waiting a couple of let me say a couple of weeks more, planning out some things to make sure that we start hosting physical sessions more. I'm not sure if you're a student of University of Ilorin, if you'll be able to join some of these sessions.
No, I'm not. I'm not a student of Unilorin. I'm in Lagos actually.
No problem. There's no problem about that. So we are also going to be hosting a couple of online sessions too that will help you with all these things. So you said you register for Zuri. Zuri is also a good place to get started. So I think anyone has does anyone have any question? Okay, so I think we've come to the end of the session. So Max said at the beginning of, like, at the middle of the session, that it will be giving out 50% to 3 people. So if you're willing to get started in web development, you can reach out to me after the session. So I'll drop my email in the chat, so you can easily reach out to me then. Before then, Mark would have I would have talked with Mark, would have decided, and anyone that is willing to get started in web development, I can easily give the person the maybe the coupon or something. So my email is in the chat box, and you can easily reach out to me anytime if you have any question or whatever. So you can easily reach out to me. So Mark, I think you should also drop your email or your WhatsApp phone number, so that, because someone asked whether you could be his mentor just now. So you can easily drop your phone number or WhatsApp or email, so you can easily reach out to you. Okay, so that's Mark's email. You can easily reach out to him also. So thank you everyone for joining this call, and I really hope you've had a great experience.
Well, thank you guys for the opportunity. It was nice having this with you guys.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you. It's awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I wish
Thank you.
everyone a great day, and I wish I would see you guys tomorrow where we are talking about Flutter. So thank you very much.